Hello, I'm Rob Sweeney, and I'm here to answer the question, why do we have emotions? It's one of those basic questions we hear over and over, not just in psychology classes or philosophy classes, but it's part of our culture and our entertainment. Think of Spock in Star Trek, a character famous for suppressing his emotions from a whole planet of people who learned to suppress their emotions because they felt that their emotions were so strong they were damaging. And so they learned to suppress them using logic and rational thinking to do so. This is basically sort of the logical conclusion to what was being taught during the Victorian era. The English Empire, with their stiff upper lip, said that the basic requirement for most people as adults was their ability to suppress their emotions and control the way they respond to things, so that everything was sort of at a level, even keel pretty much all the time. But that would never really work, did it? One of the points of those entertainments with Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk flying around the galaxy was that Spock never really did learn how to truly control his emotions. And Kirk learned that those emotions were part of what made us not just human, but living beings. So why do we have emotions? Well, think about what they do for us. Imagine being the caveman sitting in a cave, and outside is a tiger, a really, really big, mean, hungry tiger. What do you feel? If you feel nothing, you may go out to pet the kitty. Why not, right? I don't feel anything. You may just sit there and stare. Well, I don't care. It's a tiger. You may go on to do something completely different. You probably would just sit there and stare at the ceiling until the tiger came in and ate you, because you don't care, right? No feelings, no emotions. The natural response for most people sitting in the cave with the big hungry tiger outside would be to feel something along the lines of fear and trepidation. I hope it doesn't come in here. If it does, I'm going to have to kill it. How do I get out of my cave? This is all very scary, the big scary tiger out there, right? So fear is a survival tool. But we have more emotions than just fear. Anger would allow us to fight that tiger, right? It gives us the energy to attack the tiger if it attacks us, and potentially to win if you're angry enough and you have enough tools and you figure out the weak spot of that tiger. There's also that pride that comes if you do so, right? So going after the animal might be something that would fill you with pride and give you that energy to get out of that cave and move on. But again, there's more complex experience involved with emotions than just fear or anger or pride. And it's more than just dealing with the tiger outside the cave. What about the other people in the cave with you? What about the woman sitting beside you if you're a man, the man sitting beside you if you're the woman? How do you relate to that person? Wouldn't it be better if that person was working with you if you actually had to attack that tiger, or if you had to defend the cave from that tiger? Wouldn't that be better? Wouldn't the emotion of love and belonging make that connection with that other person more likely? What we find is that the broad range of emotions that we have are all useful tools in our experience as a living being, not just in dealing with survival things like avoid the tiger or eat the mushroom or avoid the mushroom, but in the kinds of experiences we need as living beings who are social creatures. It allows us to connect to other people, disconnect from people who are untrustworthy, raise our children appropriately, as elders pass information along, as young people learn the information coming in. We need all of these emotions to make all of those things possible. And that's why emotions are part of who we are. We also find that this is one of the most basic concepts in living beings as a whole. If you go to a earthworm outside, he's not having a lot of experience in the world that's very complex, right? He digs in the dirt, he eats what's in the dirt. He doesn't have fancy eyes. He doesn't have fancy relationships with other worms. But we find that if you were to find that worm on the sidewalk and touch him, He'll respond as if he's been hurt, and if you stomp next to him, he'll crawl away as if he's scared. And if you put other worms near him, he'll crawl towards them as if he feels happy when he's with the other worms. Anybody who's had a pet knows that that pet has emotions. Even the ones that we describe in our social culture as being sort of emotionless, the snakes and the lizards, the spiders. Those people who have those snakes, lizards, and spiders as pets will tell you they know when their people are there, and they respond differently to those who are in their family, their people, as opposed to other people or other animals. They act as if they feel things for you and about you. They may be alien in that a reptile doesn't feel exactly the same way a mammal does, but you can recognize those emotions. So they're basic to being alive. They're basic to all living physiology at some level. Emotions are that important. So how does this translate to the way our bodies work and we work as people? Well, you'll find that if you look in the brain, and we're going to put up an image of the brain here, that part of the brain that creates our emotions is at the very center of where the brain is. The brain is sort of this roundish thing that has at the top there is the cortex, and the part of the brain that does all the broad thinking, the big concepts at the top, right in the top and the front. That's where the thinking part is. But at the base of the brain, at the bottom and the back, in the middle, protected by everything else, protected by all that, the rest of the brain, protected by the skull and all the other bones and everything that's in there, is that part of the brain that creates emotion. The hypothalamus, the amygdala, the hippocampus, these are all parts of that central part of the brain that create emotion. And what we find is that every other part of the brain is connected to those emotional organs, those organs that create emotions for us. They're all connected. And in fact, when you think about it, the eye is in the front, here in the front. The part of the brain that sees is in the back. And the vein that creates that connection runs through the eye, through those emotions, to the part of the brain at the back. That means that without that emotion, we couldn't see correctly. Think about that for a minute. Without emotion, you can't see correctly. To put that in a more scientific way, I suppose, or more, let's say, a more physical way. Your eye doesn't actually see. What your eye does is it collects light and shadow, and it transmits those images of light and shadow through that emotional part of the brain to the back, where the brain then takes those images and creates meaning. It says, that thing in front of me that is black and has a little green light in it is a camera. And it knows this because it has memories of what cameras look like. And this looks like other cameras. It does the things that cameras do while I'm watching it. Well, how would it know to remember those things? Because all of the parts of the brain that do memory are connected to those parts of the brain that do emotion. Without the emotional response to the past experiences with cameras, cameras would have no meaning. So when I looked at something that looked like a camera, if I literally had no emotions attached to my memories at all, I would never remember what a camera was, and that wouldn't look like anything to me. I literally couldn't see it correctly. It would be meaningless without some level of emotional response that makes memory possible. So memory is not just a matter of, emotion is not just a matter of a survival tool. It's how the brain works. It's the core of what makes everything else that the brain does possible. It makes memory possible. It makes perception possible. It makes thinking possible. Everything that we do comes from that. All of this relates back to what we said earlier about everything we do comes from everything we are. It's one of those 4 parts of a total behavior. What we think, what we do, what our body does, and what we feel. And that core part, the oldest part of the brain, is that part that feels. And then right beside that and attached to that is what the body does. That part of the brain stem that connects to things like heart, lungs, respiratory system, GI tract, muscles. They're all right there at the same part of the brain where emotions are created. So they're attached in a way that is fundamentally more important and stronger than even the thinking part at the top and the front of the brain. That's why we have emotion. That's what emotions are for.